I will pass it on to the senior management team. I totally understand, and I will pass it on to the senior.
Right, good evening everybody, it's 7:30.
I'm sorry.
Just announcing the fact there's a planning committee meeting starting. It is not being live streamed, but it is being recorded. Welcome all the members and members of the public to the meeting. Introducing the officers present, we have Kimberly Rowley sitting to my far left. We have Deputy Monitoring Officer Jane McGrew, Sarah Haythorpe, the Principal Committee Secretary, Claire Westwood Development Manager, Team Leader, Alan Walton, Planning Officer.
Can you speak into the microphone?
I'm very sorry. And Scott Walker is also Planning Officer. Right, there will be natural ventilation this evening during the whole of the meeting, the windows and the doors open. And I also have to advise that if there should be a fire or alarm, then you need to go out these doors to get out to the car park as soon as you possibly can and not use those stairs or the lift. And could you please turn off your mobiles or at least put them on silent. Right, the agenda. Item 1 on the agenda this evening is apologies for absence. Sorry.
Through you, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Debbie Morris, and the name substitute tonight is Councillor Lisa Hudson.
Chair. Right, item 2 on the agenda. Can you hear that now? Yep. Okay. Item 2 on the agenda is minutes of the last meeting, which was on the 23rd of September. Has anybody got anything they would like to add, change or take away?
Chair, not in respect to the minutes, just to say...
The Chairman of Chorleywood Planning rang me on the way in to say that she's been taken unwell and had wanted to speak on behalf of some applications tonight, and just wanted that noted from the Parish Council, if that's possible.
I'm quite prepared to defer the signing if there's something she would like to add or change.
minutes, it's to do with...
Just to do with this.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Right, thank you very much. That's fine, thank you, Raj. Right, if any accuracy issues are put forward by a member and duly seconded, a vote would be required, but obviously there don't seem to be any changes to the minutes that I'm aware of. Nobody else's? No? Okay, right, I will sign the minutes at the end of the meeting in that case. Right, item 3 on the agenda, any other urgent business?
Through you, Chair, I'm not aware of any other business for the meeting tonight, and that's set out on the agenda.
Thank you, Sarah. Item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members of the committee this evening?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare interest in the Moorpark application, as I'm a member of the Moorpark Heritage Trust, and also I'm the Chair of the Planning Committee at Bedford Royal Parish Council on the Little Firs application, and I've come with a clear and open mind on that decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, I'm also going to read out the following statement. All members are reminded that they should come to meetings with an open mind and be able to demonstrate that they are open-minded. You should only come to your decision after due consideration of all the information provided, whether by planning officers, in the introduction, by applicants, agents, by objectors, or by fellow councillors. The committee report in itself is not the sole piece of information to be considered. Prepared speeches to be read out are not a good idea. They might suggest you've already firmly made up your mind about an application before hearing any additional information provided on the night. And they will not take account of information provided on the night. You must always avoid giving the impression of having firmly made up your mind in advance, no matter that you might be predisposed to any view. Right, moving on, item 5, which is the first item of interest this evening, is retrospective change of use for open storage of builders' machinery, equipment and material at Maple Lodge, Denham Way, Maple Cross, Hearts. Adam, can you present any of the updates?
Yes, so there's no update to this item, so it's as per the published agenda. I'll just show a site location plan here. So you can see it's the site edged in red. And there's a closer plan this site. So there's a container for the ploughs, but there's no update.
Okay, thank you for that. Raj?
Thank you, Chair. I'm the ward councillor for the area, and I see that today's agenda is loaded with Maple Cross. As far as I'm concerned on this one, weight should be given to point 4.1.1, which is the environmental agency as an objection on this, and I think that the officer's recommendation of refusal should be supported, and I recommend that we carry that.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Martin?
I second, even though the microphone's not working.
It is now. I second that. I'm going to ask the council to agree, members of the committee to agree the motion by general assent. If this is not possible, then we will be voting by a show of hands, and the result of the vote will be advised and read out. Can we do a show of hands? So all those against?
No, for.
I'm sorry, for refusal. For refusal.
Through you, Chair, that's been unanimously agreed.
Thank you very much. 6, retrospective. Change of use for the site of vehicle hire along with the processing of construction waste materials, aggregates and soil at Maple Cross, Maple Lodge, Denaway, Maple Cross, Herts. Adam, do you have an update on this one?
There's no update on this one, just to show where the site is relative to the site we just saw. That was the site of the application we just saw on the left-hand side of the screen. And we have a drawing showing where there's containers and parking, and this is the area where materials are processed. And this is just an elevation drawing of the site as it is. And this photograph looking into the site with the container and double stack containers. That's all, thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Councillor Correa.
The same objection by environmental agency. I see no reason not to support the officer's recommendation for refusal on this, and I propose that we carry that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hall?
I just wanted to ask, actually, just a small point. It says about the applicant has not supplied adequate information, so can the officers just confirm they've not supplied any other information relative to these applications? Thank you.
That's correct. The applicant has not supplied still the information which we required, and that's why we
Just looking at the agenda, so in addition to the Environment Agency, we appear to have objections from the Highways Authority and Affinity Water. Are those objections still valid, or have we had any further updates?
So there's no update to the report, so everything in there still stands.
I'm happy on that basis, Chairman, to second the recommendation for refusal. Okay, I'll go along the same lines as last time. Can I do this by a show of hands? Those for the recommendation?
You can announce that's unanimously refused.
And that's unanimously refused. Moving on then. Item 7. Retrospective again, change of use of hangar for the maintenance repair of lorries at Maple Lodge, Denaway, Maple Cross, Herts. Adam, any update on this one?
Sorry, no update again. And just to give a familiar drawing once more time, so this application is an essential part of the site with the hangar which is set furthest from the access road. So it's just concerning this hangar and the area out to the front, which is labelled bulk transfer. And This is just an elevation drawing in terms of photographs. We've just got some images showing the hangar in use for vehicle repairs, the office building, porter cabin to the rear of the site, the vehicle being repaired, double stacked containers which were mentioned in the report. There's nothing else to add, thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. Raj, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. The officer has prepared a robust report, and the same weight should be given again in the environmental agency objection, and I say that we have the same process. Get in with this and object.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second? Councillor Royal? Thank you very much. Can I have a show of hands on this? All those in favour of the recommendation? And that again is unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Right, moving on then. Item 8, comprehensive redevelopment to provide 2 of warehouses, Class E, G111, B2, B8 units comprising a total of 16,115 square metres, including 1,882 square metres of ancillary, E bracket GI bracket office space, access, landscaping and associated works at development site Maple Lodge, Close, Maple Cross, Hertfordshire. Claire, could you...
Thank you, Chair. So the 2 further neighbour objections received since the publication of the agenda, reiterating objections which are set out in the committee report, namely that the proposed development would have an unacceptable impact on the amenities of neighbouring occupiers and that the development is unsuitable for the area and will bring no benefits for residents. It's considered that the material considerations are addressed in the report. Additionally, following the submission of the committee report, we received a further objection from Herts and Middlesex Wildlife Trust. I understand that this has been sent directly to members of the committee, so they have had sight of the full comments. However, in summary, they do not consider that the DEFRA metric has been correctly populated, and as such, the application does not achieve 10% biodiversity net gain, and the forest and moth has not been appropriately compensated for. Again, it's considered the ecology matters are fully addressed in the committee report. There's no further updates. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I have to say first and foremost that it's a very comprehensive report. Thank you very much for that, Claire. Right, now we do have 2 members of the public who wish to speak. First of all, we have Mr. Gavin Cooper who wishes to speak against the application, and if you would like to come down to the table there with a microphone, you will have 3 minutes, and that will start when you start. And you will be reminded at 2 minutes 30. If you just press the button, the red light should come on the microphone. Right, thank you members. My name is Gavin Cooper and I'm here on behalf of the Maple Cross and West High Residents Association. I'm a local resident and town planner. The officer's report takes the approach that conditions and money can address any harm that will occur from the development. This is totally wrong. The site can and will have a significant environmental impact that must be assessed prior to determination. The impact will be significant on local residents, groundwater, ecology, biodiversity and highways. Policy DM6, Section 41 of the NERC Act and the Water Framework Directive require that there is no adverse impact on the Maple Lodge Nature Reserve. The model prepared by the developers shows a 4% reduction in water to the nature reserve. Real readings by members of the nature reserve and Affinity Water show this figure will be larger. This is an adverse impact. This test is not as set out in the report of material deterioration, it is adverse. The harm or adverse impact or material deterioration will result in the loss of the forest moth on the site and will harm the nature reserve. The nature reserve is sensitive to change. Compensation proposed for just the moth is simply a sum of money with no actual plan of how this will be delivered. Is the extinction of this national priority species and harm to the nationally protected habitats of the nature reserve worth $142,000? Or is it just £1? It's somewhere in the middle. We don't know. The report identifies there will be a risk to public water supply, but again can be covered by condition. What happens if there is harm to water supply? It's simply not good enough to take a jump into the dark based on model data when real data is available. This also applies to highway impact. Noise is another issue where conditions are proposed, but again no detail of what could happen. The development could be 24 hours and no conditions are proposed to control this. Members have a choice whether to believe the model data or rely on real-world data and experience. No information has been provided to show that the proposed granting conditions can be delivered. Land ownership changes will be required. There's no detail. Overall, the impact will be significant and the application should be refused. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. And we also have a Mr. Tim Sturgis who wishes to speak in support of the application. And again, you will have 3 minutes and be advised at 2 minutes 30. And it will start when you start.
Good evening, my name is Tim Sturgis and I'm speaking on behalf of Barwood as their planning advisor. Barwood purchased this land outright from Impact Developments in autumn 2020. This application follows a recent appeal, unsuccessful only due to the amount of information provided to support a condition on groundwater mitigation for the public water supply. Following this decision, Barwood has extensively engaged with Affinity Water, who following detailed technical assessment now fully support the application. Notwithstanding this single issue, the application has been revised to include an energy strategy which will deliver a 40% reduction in carbon dioxide emissions, significantly greater than the existing 5% and emerging 20% policy requirements, the provision of 20% active and 30% passive electric vehicle charging spaces in line with emerging policy, the retention of 23 trees previously proposed to be removed, and through cooperation with Council, an increased financial contribution for biodiversity is calculated by the statutory consultee using the emerging DEFRA metric. Barwood is a recognised market leader with an outstanding track record of commercial property development, and this scheme is designed for the highest calibre of occupier. This allocated site is required to meet the identified employment need for the district, and as an exemplar form of sustainable development will deliver numerous planning benefits. These include a substantial contribution to the local economy at a time of economic uncertainty, delivering over 400 direct and 200 indirect full-time and construction jobs combined, proactively addressing drainage through the upgrade of the estate road, improving the safety of the local highway network with the provision of a Toucan crossing on Denham Way, and delivering a net gain in biodiversity. Members can take confidence in the scrutiny that has been placed on this application in coming to a recommendation for approval. The applicant has undertaken a legal review of the application. The officer's report demonstrates a robust assessment of all planning matters. There are no objections from statutory consultees, and the report has also been reviewed by your legal officers and independent legal advice. Barwood are fully committed to delivering a significant investment in Maple Cross at a time when neighbouring land remains undeveloped, offices are sat vacant, and now the recent news that Scansco is vacating its neighbouring HQ. This application has been robustly assessed throughout its full period, and members can have confidence in both the lawfulness and the planning merit of the officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, I've also got one of the ward councillors here this evening, Councillor Phil Williams, who was asked to speak, and also Councillor Hiscox, the County Councillor, who also wishes to speak. Councillor Williams, you want to go first?
Thank you very much, Chair. Nice to see so many people from Maple Cross here this evening. Thank you very much for coming down. Looking at that map there, you see the proximity of the houses to that red area. Now I just want you all to be quiet just for a second and listen. That's the M25. That's 2 miles away. That building there is 13 metres away from residents' houses. How someone can say, I believe it was the Cottage report, how someone can say that there is not going to be a detrimental impact on those residents 13 metres away when we can hear the M25 here now from over 2 miles away. I say that that report is flawed and it needs to be looked into. The residents have looked into it. They've commissioned their own report. primary focus of the noise assessment is to protect our residents. This report does not protect them. We need to throw this into touch and protect our residents. Thank you for that. We also need to be looking at the Water Framework Directive, obligations to prove no harm. Three of the District Council have an obligation to protect our drinking water. They're planning to put 3,000 piles into the aquifer, or nearby the aquifer, certainly above the aquifer. Our duty is to protect that aquifer. Now I know at the moment, because I get letters and emails from the residents of Maple Cross saying we can't police the parking there, much less police 3,000 piles going into the ground. How are we going to police those piles going in when we have trouble getting Gary's wheelchair around the corner because of cars parked on the curb? We've also got the Ecology Report to look at, and the priority species, the forester moth, and we must give a nod to Barwood for saying that they're going to make provision for the forester moths elsewhere. The plants that the forester moth feed on are plentiful in Hertfordshire. It's not the plants they want, it's that they want. That's why they've chosen there, because that is the right land for them to be on. This is a priority species. We have to protect it. You can't just throw money at it, plant some plants elsewhere and hope they're going to turn up. They're not. So I ask that you reject this application on the grounds that I've made. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Councillor Hiscox.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also here to oppose this application for three main reasons. Firstly, the water supply from this chalk aquifer is used by residents in the whole of the Rickmansworth area and beyond. This development seriously threatens our water supply. As Council said, 3,310 piles will be driven into the chalk aquifer, and Affinity Water cannot guarantee that no harm will occur. In fact, they state the risk still exists. Should we be gambling with this and future generations' ability to have enough clean water? And I don't believe this council has the manpower to adequately monitor and enforce on this development to ensure that public drinking water is not impacted. Secondly, the developer's report states that there will be a reduction in the flow of water by 4% to Maple Lodge Nature Reserve. With or without climate change, this will have an adverse effect, and even this 4% reduction could upset the ecological balance on the nature reserve, causing an effect on wildlife and habitats for perpetuity. Once again, should we be gambling with our ecosystems for the generations to come for the sake of a warehouse? Finally, we must protect the very near residents, especially those in Longmoor Close, by changing Edition 19 concerning noise. An actual noise assessment has now been undertaken rather than the modelled one submitted previously. The planning inspector actually commented that they had reservations on the previous modelled noise assessment. With the new data acquired by this actual assessment, I asked the committee to change the wording to protect residents' health, which will be compromised by constant noise. This new report proves that residents will suffer from sleep disturbance at night, and therefore I also asked for a new condition asking for restricted operating hours to protect our residents' health and well-being. Our residents deserve the right for an independent inspector to make the final decision at a if necessary. But the application on the current evidence should be turned down tonight. This greenbelt site should be for an industry which does not destroy the lives of our residents or compromise our precious environment for generations to come. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Claire, is there any points you wish to answer before I go open it to the committee?
Chairman, before you move on, I would hope to speak on this application.
I'm afraid you can't, Councillor,
Can you state for the minutes the reason why?
because I've been told that you can't.
But all councillors,
You are not a ward councillor.
all councillors can often speak on applications. It's happened before.
You are not a ward councillor.
All councillors have spoken. I was told before the meeting I could speak. It's up to the chairman's discretion.
Right, well, it's limited that you've asked to speak and that I've said no.
But I'd like to know the reason why. Is it your discretion?
It is my discretion and it's my answer and you...
Personal discretion that I
Yes,
can speak.
yes.
Not because all councillors can't speak.
Ward councillors can speak, but you are not a ward councillor.
But usually other councillors, normal councillors, can speak. So I want to know why I can't speak this evening.
I just-
It was indicated prior to the meeting.
It is at the chairman's discretion, councillor, and my discretion says that you cannot speak. That's it, and it's minuted.
Will you explain why it is, Chair? Because this is unprecedented. It's never happened before.
Oh, it's mine. Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll just try and respond to some of the points that were made that may not be in the order that they were made, but just as a point of clarification, just because I think it was one of the last things that was said by Councillor Hiscox, just as a point of clarification, the site is not in the Greenbelt. It is an allocated employment site. There is a very narrow strip of Greenbelt by the access road, but the built development, i.e. the buildings, the car parking, etc., are not within the Greenbelt. Obviously, as members are aware and was set out in the report, it is an allocated employment site. We have had a previous application which was refused and subsequently dismissed at appeal in relation to the impact on groundwater, and for the reasons obviously set out in the report, we consider that those have been addressed. But just responding to a couple of the points that members have raised. So in relation to noise, as Councillor Hiscox mentioned, a noise report was submitted by the Residents Association, and that was reviewed by environmental health officers, and they agreed that some of the points it made were valid and that there should be amendments to condition. So with reference to condition 19, I consider it is a tight condition. The condition would ensure that prior to the operation of the site, by any prospective tenant, a noise assessment has to be submitted, and it was intentionally worded as kind of prior to operation of the site rather than prior to commencement of works, because if it was prior to commencement, at that point a tenant might not have been confirmed, so it would still be based on assumptions rather than the expected, rather than known operation. So I consider that the wording of that condition 19 is appropriate and deals with the impact in relation to noise. I think it's also, as I said, this was not found to be an objection at the time of the previous appeal when the inspector considered that point. In relation to the water supply and the comments of Affinity Water, obviously the comments are set out in full in the report, and as the member noted, they do identify that their risk to public water supply remains. However, they also say that they recognise that those risks can be managed and that there are appropriate conditions attached to the recommendation that would deal with that. So again, we do consider that that point has been appropriately addressed as set out in the report and with the number of conditions which are suggested. Similarly with regards to the Maple Lodge Nature Reserve, I think there were comments in relation to impact on the groundwater specifically, and just bear with me 1 second. I think the point is that we feel that we have undertaken our statutory duties in accordance with the Water Framework Directive, and that ultimately there's not demonstrable evidence to show that the proposed development would cause deterioration of the nature reserve wetland ecosystem. So that point is considered to have been addressed. With regards to the forest and moth, Section 106 contribution is proposed to enable the creation and management of an appropriate species-rich grassland, which will provide suitable habitat conditions for the forest and moth. And subject to this, we will have complied with the NERC Act and our obligations in relation to biodiversity duty in the Section 41 species responsibilities. I think that those are the main points, Chair, but obviously I'm happy to comment further if...
Okay, thank you very much, Claire. Right, members of the committee. Councillor Royal first, and then Councillor Hayward.
Yes, one point on the report I'd like the officers to comment on is it states about the trip report on the highways, and it says that reports are dated 2/17, which is obviously 4 years out of date, and we've got data here referring to the impact on local roads. Is there a new trip report? Is it going to be brought up? Because even with these, looking at these numbers for the hotel as well as the obviously the site, there's a huge amount of transport, and it's going to clog up all around here. And we've got schools here, people going to work. We've already got places that obviously are tied up, with cars, and more of these lorries and vehicles are going to make it even more difficult. Thank you.
Councillor Hayward.
Thank you. I think all the points that have been raised are totally valid about the drinking water, the nature reserve, the noise. 3,310 piles for 16,000 square feet is huge. Can you just clarify the position on access to this site? There would be no access down Maple Lodge Lane through the houses, would there?
Thank you. Thank you. So just in relation to the point regarding the trip figures, I think obviously the point to note is that there's been extensive modelling, and the County Council's Highway Authority have reviewed and that essentially the number of additional trips as a result of the development would not be severe to cause a reason for refusal of highways grounds. In relation to access, in terms of Councillor Hayward's query, that access is proposed via the private access road with the introduction of a signalised junction with the A412. Access is not proposed via Maple Lodge Close.
But would it be a definite, I know it's not proposed, but would that actually be blocked off, or is there still an opening as such?
It's not proposed to block that access, but as I said, so through the improvements to the junction, obviously Maple Lodge Close is a residential road with traffic calming measures. Obviously, by the improvements to the access and the junction with the A412, it's obviously making that much more desirable for those who are accessing the application site. It's the closest access, and it would be upgraded. But no, it's not proposed to block. As it said, in terms of managing that, in terms of aspects of construction, there would be a construction management plan required by condition, and that would obviously include details of routing of vehicles, so access to the site can be controlled that way. And in terms of, at the end, there would obviously, as I said, there's also requirements for travel plans, and these generally would be required to include details of information that would be given to occupiers of the building, to workers, to employees with regards to access to the site, etc., so that it would be, the access would be promoted. So we consider that the access is acceptable for the reasons set out in the report.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I just wanted to sum up that basically I know you say they have addressed, I know you say the appeal was not allowed because they haven't addressed, and you now feel they have addressed those issues, and your report is very comprehensive, but based on the local knowledge and the risk of these not not being controlled properly, with the potential risk to the water, I personally would like to propose refusal of this application.
Okay. Any other members wish to speak? Raj? Oh, Councillor Bedford. Raj. Thank you, Chair. Being a ward councillor, it's a public councillor in this seat here, and I'll be failing to do my duty not to say what they feel. We've had 286 objections on this, not a single letter of support. The fact is, enough is enough. They have suffered, and they keep on suffering. We are back here. This application, this site was refused in 2019. Went on appeal in June 2020. It was refused. It's the same site. The majority of the site, I appreciate, is outside the metropolitan green belt, but part of it is still in green belt. Majority of the site is located within the flood zone 1. I also further notice on the report that TRDC traffic engineer has not responded. May I ask, Chair, why?
I can't respond as to why somebody hasn't commented on the application. They're not obliged to comment on the application, they're not a statutory consultee, obviously the Highways Authority and also Highways have commented on the application. As I said, their comments are detailed and set out in full in the report.
Councillor Bedford and Councillor Wall.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I make the remarks I want to make about the application, I wanted to say one thing, which may or may not be popular in this room, but I'm going to say it anyway. We are very lucky at Three Rivers because, despite the fact we have a lot of very complex and difficult planning applications here, we have the professional assistance, knowledge, experience of a great team of planning officers. And I am really unhappy at the number of people. They make a decision based on their professional knowledge and judgment. They are not biased, they are not working for anyone except the council and its residents. And for them to have received some of the comments that they have received and some of the comments that we have received as councillors talking about the officers in derogatory and slanderous tones depresses me. It absolutely depresses me because I have every faith in those officers and I think the other members of the committee do too.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that and place that on record. And Claire and your team, we thank you for the hundreds, if not thousands of hours of work you have put into this and the support you've had from other members of the council team. So thank you for that. However, just because we have officers who are professional, who give us their judgment, this committee is still the local planning authority. And we delegate some decisions to officers and we make the rest ourselves. And the ones that come to committee, we have chosen as councillors to make ourselves and not delegate, and that's why it's here tonight. And sometimes we do disagree with officers, and officers are very good at shrugging their shoulders and getting on with giving the best possible defence that might be needed for those cases that go ahead. And one case was in fact the last application that went forward on this site. And for those of us that have ploughed through the 169 pages, not just once but twice or more than that, I think we can see that there are a number of situations where it is not necessarily easy to see how pre-commencement conditions might be satisfied or how some of the other conditions may be satisfied. Now, most members of the planning committee and most of the officers were in the room earlier this year when we first looked at this year, for the second time, the application at Killing Down Farm in Croxley Green. And at that point there was some concern from, I think, most members of the committee.
Excuse me.
That's an interesting song to have played at this moment. I think a number of us were concerned about the reports on highways and the report that had been commissioned, been carried out by the applicant and on behalf of the county council. We were not happy with those remarks, and we asked for an independent report to be commissioned by this council, funded by this council, to cover the aspects that we were not happy with around highways at the entrance to Killing Down Farm. We obtained that and we were able to bring that back to a committee 3 months later and determine the application and refuse the application, although not on highways grounds. So I think at the moment there are so many contrary thoughts, comments, reports, everybody thinking they know better than everybody else, and I think the only thing we can do is to get a once and for all report commissioned by this council to settle those issues. So what I would like to propose is something along the lines of, and I'm sure we can get some support to get the wording right on this, but something along the lines for deferment to get that report commissioned to give us the evidence that we need to have if we want to make a refusal on those grounds, that the committee is not satisfied that the risks the developments may pose to the neighbouring area, and in particular the Maple Lodge Nature Reserve, have not been fully understood, or that the suggested conditions would meet the requirements of the various agencies to ensure that there was no harm caused, and therefore call for the application to be deferred for the council to instruct their own expert hydrologist, ecologist or similar in order to review the application and advise the committee. So I would like to put that forward, Chairman, and ask so that we can get that information and get a third party to give us that information, one who is not associated with either side in this application. And I feel at that point we will be better able to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So we now have 2 proposals. One proposal from Councillor Hayward. Do we actually have a seconder for that, which is for refusal? Okay, sorry, you want to... Okay, right, so Councillor Ward, you're prepared to second that, are you?
I am, yes. Second Alex Hayward's proposal.
Right, okay.
100% clear exactly what the reason for refusal was. Could we have clarifications to the nature of your suggested reason for refusal, please?
My suggested reason for refusal was that the previous application was also refused by the inspector on the basis that the groundwater issues had not been addressed properly, and in the report I feel they still haven't been. Not adequately enough for us to give permission to this. There is still too much risk involved.
Okay, thank you. So essentially you're, as I understand, saying that you're not satisfied that the risks the development may pose to the groundwater have been addressed. Okay.
If any councillor wants to contribute with any...
Okay, and then we also have a second proposition from Councillor Bedford. Do we have a seconder for that?
It was on. Happy to second Councillor Bedford's proposal. Having read everything in the reports and everything that's been emailed to us, and having worked in risk management for years and years, looking at this, I don't understand in some areas of this what information has been given is the most accurate. I genuinely don't.
some of it's inclusive. I think it's a really good idea to get an independent third party, as suggested by Councillor Bedford, to look at these things so once and for all we can get this right, because we know if we get it wrong, it'll be overturned at appeal. Thank you.
Okay, so just to summarise the second motion, I understand that essentially the recommendation is that it's deferred for the council to instruct their own essentially expert hydrologist or similar to review the application on the grounds that members are not satisfied that the development that the risks the development pose to the Maple Lodge Nature Reserve have been fully understood, or that the suggested conditions would meet the requirements. I think Kimberly.
Okay, thank you for that. Kimberly, you wish to...
Just thank you for the comment to the committee. I just want to point out, as I would with any other application, that obviously going against the officer's recommendation, that both terms of motions, that there is a risk of an appeal either against a refusal or against deferral. The application has been an extended timescale that I think, and Claire will clarify if I'm wrong, is a week on Friday. If that is reached and the applicant doesn't agree an extension of time, then they could go to appeal for non-determination. I would point that out on any application, so I felt it needed to point it out to members tonight.
Thank you, Kimberly. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you. I mean, on that, I would just say that I think we're all aware of the risk of the applicant appealing on non-determination. However, if we refuse the application, the applicant will go to appeal anyway. So either way, we have the situation of appeal. I just feel that if we're going to be heading towards an appeal, which will be long, and where we will need to engage our own planning consultant and other consultants, that we should have that information first, because if we have that information, we're already halfway down the line of what we need to do for the appeal. And we need to have that information. I think for us to refuse on the grounds that we don't believe an expert report without having our own evidence to prove why we shouldn't believe that expert report, I think leaves us open to real problems at appeal. If we believe that the reasons are strong enough, then we should be prepared to say we would engage our own expert to come with this, because we have to do it at appeal. We can't just go to appeal and say, we all feel like it's not really right. We need someone who knows in detail what we're doing to actually give us that information. And if we actually believe that that's true, we should have the faith to do that. Otherwise, we're putting people in an impossible situation in appeal.
Thank you very much.
Chairman, I'd just say that I think the Affinity Water, where it says it's development neutral, for me backs it up enough. It's not a positive endorsement of this development that the water is safe. And I know Councillor here who spoke commented on DM6 and other issues as well, and I believe there was an issue about landscaping in the surrounding area which hadn't been met. I didn't agree with that at the time, but it came up in the paperwork. And I just feel we talk about the residents suffering, and we'll see who votes for another 3 months suffering. I don't know.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, not sure quite how we're going to work this, Sarah. Do we take Councillor Hayward's proposal, and seconded by Councillor Raw, to refuse this first, and then go to Councillor Bedford and Councillor Martins, or do we do it all the way around?
It's my understanding you have to take the amendment first.
Okay, so in that case, we'll go with Councillor Hayward's...
That fails, no, the amendment...
Take the amendment first, okay, Councillor Bedford.
We go back to Councillor Hayward's proposal.
Right, so all those in favour of Councillor Bedford's proposal to defer this, seconded by Councillor Keith Martin, to defer this to enable the council to employ their own experts to sort out some of the stuff that we clearly as a committee don't quite understand. All those in favour of that particular proposal? All those against? Okay, so this application has been deferred for the time being to enable the council to employ their own experts to try and make head or tail of some of the parts of the report that we're not quite sure of.
You're going to perhaps give a minute for people to leave and continue.
Councillor Williams?
Nothing about noise.
I've already spoken on this subject. I just wonder if we'll be allowed to speak next time, Chair.
I would have thought, yes, it will be a new report, so I don't see any reason why not.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Right, if any of you good people wish to leave now, go home and have your dinner or watch TV or something, there's a couple of minutes before we start with the next part of the agenda. Thank you very much for coming, by the way, and keeping quiet, because it could have been a bit noisy. Is there any chance you could do your talking outside if possible, because we have still another 8 items on the agenda, 7 items on the agenda, sorry, and it would be nice if we could go home not too long after you. Right, thank you very much for being so patient out there. We did have quite a contentious planning application before you all came to join us this evening. So anyway, moving on, item 9 is the construction of the new entrance gates and boundary wall to the front and fencing to the flank boundaries at Dovetail Cottage, 21 Chestnut Avenue, Rickmansworth.
Chairman, sorry, I'm sitting back for distancing purposes. Can we shut the doors on while people are shouting in the corridors? Oh, they have been.
I think they have been shut.
There's still quite a lot more.
Yeah, well,
That's the windows, unfortunately.
I think it might be to do with windows.
okay. Anyway, Scott, could you, is there any update? No update, Chair. Well, thank you very much. We do have one public speaker, and it appears to be Lauren. I was given a different name altogether, but... oh, right, so, yes, okay. Anyway, you will have 3 minutes to speak. You'll be advised when you will reach 2 minutes 30, and then after 3 minutes we'll cut you off.
Sorry, she's four.
She's 4. And if you press the red button, the microphone should come on, and you can start when you like.
Good evening. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak here tonight in favour of 21 Chestnut Avenue planning application. We've lived at number 21 for 18 years and we love and respect our neighbours and our street. The reason we're seeking planning permission for the fence and gates is our property for security reasons, as on the 2nd of September last year our car was stolen off our drive. The thieves were able to walk on the drive at 2 a.m. and take the vehicle in less than 30 seconds. This incident was immensely traumatic for myself and my family, and our children have been severely affected by this. There's been a massive increase in crime in the area, particularly car crime on Chestnut Avenue, with 3 cars alone being stolen in the last 90 days. With regards to the concerns about the planning application, we've worked very closely with the planning department to address the objections raised and have their recommendation for approval. Impact on character and street scene relating to policy CP1, CP12 and policy DM1. Our site is directly opposite number 18 and 20, both of which have front boundary walls that are higher than we are proposing, so these cannot be considered out of character, and it will be softened by the existing hedging and new hedging we plan to plant. The iron gates, by definition, are not closed-boarded gates. They are open and allow view to the property, therefore keeping with the openness of the street. There are many examples of the surrounding areas of gates, including closed-boarded gates within the existing street at number 2A. They are 1.8 metres high. Our proposed gates are much lower, at 1.2 metres, will be set back from the road, and we propose to have soft landscaping to retain the sylvan character, therefore having no impact on the street scene. We reduce the initial fence from 1.8 metres to 1 metre, which is lower than the house opposite, which has boundary granite walls at 1.5 metres high and pillars at 1.8. We will also be planting 1.5 metre high hedging immediately adjacent to the fence. Furthermore, if anyone so wished to in our road, they can erect a 1 metre fence without the need for planning permission. Impact on neighbours relating to policy CP12 and to policy DM1. The proposed plan will not impact surrounding neighbours' properties in terms of loss of light or impact on their visual amenities or overlooking. We have 2 TPO trees, and our tree report showed we have with existing, so we'll be using the existing low front wall concrete base, no excavations, but also we've carried out trial excavations and no roots have been discovered. Therefore, the landscape officer has no objections. In terms of the highway officer, they have no objections because the proposed gates are set back 5.5 metres from the road and will be inward opening. We therefore believe this does not impact the street, our neighbours or the street scene character, but it provides necessary security for our family.
Thank you very much indeed. Right in the sign.
Thank you.
Members of the committee, you've got any comments? Or could you turn the... Thank you. Members of the committee. Comments at all? Okay. Councillor Hayward.
I have driven past this property and I'm very sorry that you had your car stolen. I can understand that must have been awful. I just want to be reassured that there will be soft planting on all of this because the houses in this street are of a very open nature. There's lots of hedgerow and I think it's really important that we keep as much as possible, especially as we're all into the climate change emergency, and greenery is really important and trees are protected. So I just want the reassurance that that is going to take place, please.
Yeah, there are two conditions, condition 6 and condition 7, which require planting and also maintained and retained and replaced if they should die. So they will be protected.
Okay. Right. Members of the committee, we do have the opportunity to give permission for this. Do I have someone prepared to propose and second? Councillor Scarf.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very happy to propose that we pass this, give permission for this to go ahead. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
All those in favour?
7, 8, 9.
And those against? And those abstaining? 2.
It's been carried.
So that's been carried. Thank you very much for coming to speak. Right, moving on, item 10 is the removal of condition 11, agricultural occupation of planning permission 17-2169-FUL at the Mulberry Bush Farm, Dawes Lane, Sarrett, WD3. Scott, do we have anything as an update on this?
I don't have an update personally, but I did forward comments from the Sarrett Parish Council, which received late this today, because one of their representatives can't attend today.
Yeah, that's right, we did get that, did read through it, thank you. We do have a speaker who is against this, Mr. Alex Petrie. If you'd like to come forward, same condition as before, you get 3 minutes, and we'll advise you at 2 minutes 30. And if you just push the red button, start when you wish.
Thank you very much. I speak in opposition of this application on behalf of all of the neighbours of the Mulberry Bush. You may recall that the committee rejected a near identical application for this dwelling in March. At its core, this application is trying to legitimise a house that was built contrary to the planning permission and where the owner has never complied and has no intention of ever complying with the agricultural condition. Both the National Planning Policy Framework and the 3 Rivers Development Management Policies expressly prohibit new buildings such as this development in Greenbelt and A and B except in exceptional circumstances. There must be an essential need for a full-time agricultural worker to live at their place of work to serve the needs of agriculture at that specific site, in this case the Mulberry Bush site alone. The policy legally requires an agricultural occupancy condition to be imposed on the dwelling. The committee therefore imposed condition 11 in 2017 as required by law in order to ensure that the dwelling was used correctly for agriculture. The planning officer's report confirms that a dwelling would not have been permitted on this site in any other case. Why then are the committee being asked to permit it now? This dwelling should be kept for agriculture on this site. An agricultural dwelling was deemed essential to provide proper standards of animal welfare to the large number of poultry on the site, despite the applicant living in a cottage less than a mile from the site. On the 1st of December 2017, there were 6,000 chickens on the site. By mid-December 2017, 2 weeks after permission was granted for the dwelling, all agriculture on the site had ceased. All 6,000 chickens, the foreign agricultural workers, and the temporary agricultural workers' dwelling had been removed. In March 2018, still with no agriculture on the site, and in direct breach of the planning permission and condition, the applicant began construction of the dwelling. 2 years on, the applicant occupied the dwelling, still in breach and still with no agriculture. In the 4 years since the agricultural dwelling was approved, no poultry farming or any other agriculture has returned to the site. The site no longer operates as an agricultural business. The chicken houses have been converted into holiday accommodation, and the small polytunnels were derelict until very recently. The applicant continued to own a cottage less than a mile from the site until November 2020. Any minor agriculture that may occur at the site from time to time would not come close to satisfying the exceptional financial and functional needs test of 6,000 chickens required by the planning policies for this dwelling. With the chicken houses converted to tourist use, the site is also incapable of doing so.
This application to remove the condition is intended solely to justify a dwelling that was built contrary to planning permission, condition 11, and both national and local planning policies. It has been occupied unlawfully for the last 4 years. Developing an unrestricted dwelling on an A or B field has always been the intention. The applicant has a proven track record of following this exact process in Loudwater. The applicant claims that agriculture is continuing on the site and will in the future. Why then is he asking for the committee to remove the agricultural condition? This application is a flagrant attempt to get around the rules and trick the committee into allowing this unlawful development. We'd like to ask you to, thank you very much, reject this application. Thank you.
Okay, members of the committee. Wish to raise any points? Councillor Hayward.
I was involved in this application back in 17, I remember, and visiting the site. I've since been off planning and now back fresh to it tonight on this application. But I can't actually see a reason why we need to lighten the condition 11 that we already had. I think the concerns about what agriculture is going on there is valid. There's very little signs of agriculture. I know there's these polytunnels, but there's already accommodation on site which can be used for agriculture. We do not need to lighten the terms on this application.
Councillor Lloyd.
Yeah, I have been to this site on many occasions, but I did walk past it again at the weekend, and I'd be more than happy to second what Councillor Hayward said, because there is no difference from what we've seen before. My only question was going to be, I thought actually things did happen between 1991 and 2001. Have we left off some of the stuff that happened in the 90s? It doesn't actually affect what I'm going to say, because that material change hasn't happened. I've listened, I've read the report and I've listened to the other speakers, so I'm comfortable with supporting.
So, Councillor Carrillo.
Thank you, Chair. I think we should be consistent with our reasoning. I'm also uncomfortable supporting this.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Hayward, would you like to actually make a proposition?
Yeah, sorry, I'd like to, in this case, go against the officers and seek not to change the condition.
Not to change the variation.
Yeah.
And Councillor Lloyd is to second that. Right, could I have that as by show of hands? We are going against the officer's recommendation. We are not going to make the variation. Sorry. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, moving on. Item 11. It's the outline application, development of up to 70 residential dwellings, use Class C3, with new access from Gosforth Lane. How's that? Okay. I won't start again. Appearance, landscaping, layout and scale reserved at former Little Firs Junior Mixed Infant School, Gosforth Lane, South Oxley, Watford. Claire, have you got any sort of update?
Thank you, Chair. I do have a couple of updates. So the first is with regards to condition C3, which is the affordable housing condition. Point I, it should be amended to say rounded to the nearest whole number of units, not rounded up. So i.e. if it was 10.1 to 10.4 it would be 10, but 10.5 to 10.9 it would be 11. Secondly, condition 19, which relates to the flood risk assessment, should be amended to read that discharge into the Thames water sewer should be restricted to no greater than 15 litres per second. So essentially adding to no greater than, this is essentially to ensure that the drainage condition doesn't require a discharge rate of 15 litres per second, because the proposal will actually achieve a lower, better rate, so essentially an improvement upon that requirement, and the condition is the maximum. Paragraph 7.9.6 refers to 16% biodiversity net gain, but just as a point of clarification, it's 18.16 area habitat gain. And the final comment was just with regards to, sorry, the final update was just with regards to the tilted balance, which isn't specifically referenced in the report, but relevant to note that in the absence of 5-year housing land supply, the presumption in favour of sustainable development applies, and the planning permission should be granted unless there are any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the framework as a whole. So that is in terms of updates, but the other point, just for the benefit of members, just in case some are not aware of the history, I just thought it might be useful just to clarify that some members of the committee will be aware that obviously outline planning permission was previously granted for up to 70 dwellings in a 75-bed care home. Subsequent to that outline planning permission, this committee previously considered a reserved matters application for approval of details for the residential care home element. Essentially, that outline permission required the reserved matters for the residential element to be submitted by a date in September, I think it was 14th of September 2021, and obviously that hasn't been done, so essentially this is a new outline application to essentially refresh the residential element of the scheme. However, it is an outline application, so it would still require a subsequent reserved matters application to be submitted to the committee, submitted for consideration in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Claire. Members of the committee. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. Clarification, please, on the new entrance. Is it just the widening of the entrance, or is there a new entrance coming in?
So, bear with me a second. So essentially, there are two existing vehicular access points into the site, and there's one existing pedestrian access, so it includes alterations to the existing vehicle access arrangements to essentially create one new Belmouth vehicular access. So, and in addition to pedestrian drop curb, so there would be one vehicular access, as you can see there on the site plan in front of you.
Is that for a two widths?
It meets the full requirements of Hertfordshire County Council's Highway Authority, who have raised no objections to the application. Obviously, access is the only detail that is provided at this outline stage, with all other matters reserved.
Okay, that's fine. Now, we do have a speaker. I'm sorry, I should have asked you to come and speak first. We have Mr. Lem, who wishes to speak in support of the application. Again, if you'd like to come down to the table, turn the microphone on. You have 3 minutes, and we'll remind you at 2 minutes 30. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, my name is Joshua Lem, and I'm Senior Planner at Vincent & Gorbing. I submitted the outline planning application on behalf of the applicant, Hertfordshire County Council, and I'm also speaking on their behalf this evening. I worked previously on the 75-bed care home situated within the same site that was unanimously motioned for approval by this very committee earlier this year. I therefore have strong knowledge of the site and the interrelationship between the two developments. As Claire has explained, the application has made an outline with all matters reserved apart from access. The application proposes up to 70 residential dwellings on a site that has not only laid vacant for years, but is allocated for residential development and for which outline permission has already been granted previously. Vehicular access into the site from Norfolk Road has already been approved under the original outline planning application, and further details were agreed with the Highways Authority during the detailed care home application. These details have been worked into this revised application to ensure that the two developments are consistent and achievable to deliver. Hertfordshire County Council have worked proactively with officers at Three Rivers District Council, as well as other key stakeholders such as the lead local flood authority and the Highways Authority. It is noted that some comments were previously raised regarding the drainage of the site, and I assure you that we have engaged with the lead local flood authority extensively to ensure that proposed development can be effectively drained. The drainage scheme recorded with the scheme approved during the previous application and developed further by the detailed care home application. The scheme utilises swales and attenuation basins set within landscape green spaces to ensure there will be no increased risk of flooding on Norfolk Road, the surrounding area or within the boundary of the site. As well as effectively draining the site, the development will provide a significant biodiversity net gain of 18.16%, well above the 10% requirement of the forthcoming Environment Bill. The plans that you see before you are the result of a significant amount of review and consultation with the design team, key stakeholders, officers and statutory consultees. The design of and the layout of the site seeks to complement the existing pattern of development in the surrounding area. The provision of up to 70 new homes, including up to 18 affordable homes, will make a significant contribution towards local housing need, which, as you are aware, there is currently a significant shortfall. It is considered that this planning application is in conformity with local and national planning policy, which is reflected in the Planning Officer's report and recommendation for approval. We therefore respectfully request that this application is approved, allowing us to deliver the much-needed homes in this sustainable location in the heart of South Oxley. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor King.
You're on.
Right, can I just clarify what the Speaker has said? He's mentioned Northwick Road twice.
Can't ask questions to the Speaker.
Right, okay, clarification is...
Of the officers about.
Of the officers. Is this Gosforth Lane or Northwick Road? Yeah, but the Speaker actually mentioned Northwick Road twice.
The site plan is there and the application site is accessed from Gosforth Lane.
Anything else from members of the committee? No, in that case we do have a recommendation, and that recommendation is to grant approval.
And it was with amendments to two conditions, conditions 3 and...
With the amendments to the two conditions mentioned.
Thank you.
3 and...
I think it was 19.
I think you said it was 19.
19, yes.
Amendments to condition 3 and 19. So with those two conditions being slightly changed, all those in favour of going to... Oh, do we have a seconder? Nobody's proposed. Is anyone proposing this? Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Ward. I'll do it myself. Okay, all those in favour of giving planning permission for this particular site? And those against? 1. So that is carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, moving on again, item 12, single story front infill extension, roof extension, including hip to gable alterations, insertion of front dormer and roof lights, insertion of rear dormer and insertion of first floor flank windows at Woodview, 11 Greenbury Close, Chorley Wood. Adam, have you got anything as an update?
No, there's no update on this one, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. There are no public speakers on this particular one. So, members of the committee. Councillor Raw.
Well, I noticed, I've got this right, the officers can clarify, if you look at the bottom picture there on that, the dormer, am I correct in saying, I'm actually looking at it now, it doesn't go from left to right fully, it does actually end a metre in from each end, does it? Am I correct on that? I think it does, don't it? It does.
Yes, the door is set in from both roof slopes. I don't know the exact dimension, but yes, it's set in.
Okay, Councillor Hayward.
Thank you. I just remember at the last meeting on another application there was great concern about the Chorley Wood plan, local plan, neighbourhood plan, whatever the terminology is, and their preservation of bungalows in the area. Can you just enlighten me as to where we sort of stand on that? Is this still considered a bungalow or not?
In terms of whether this is a bungalow, I don't know that it's necessarily I don't know how relevant that is as a matter of planning judgment. The Chorleywood Neighbourhood Plan policy, which essentially supports the retention of bungalows, has been taken into account as part of the consideration of this application because it is a material consideration, but for the reasons set out in the 718 of the report, we don't consider that there is essentially any evidence that this proposal would breach that policy or any evidence that this would not be suitable for older people to live in the same way that the existing property is or is not suitable. So we've taken the policy into account in the balance, judged that the development is acceptable. Probably not a question that can be answered at this committee because we're here to consider the merits of this particular case, so it would all come down to the evidence and the merits of a particular application.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Corey?
Thank you, Chair. I just seek clarification from the officer. Did I hear you say that weight has been given to policy 4 of the Chorleywood Neighbourhood Development Plan? This has been taken into consideration?
Yes, that is what I said.
Okay, anybody else on the committee? No? Right, in that case, could I have a proposer and a seconder to move the recommendation planning permission be granted or ask for an alternative recommendation? Councillor Martin? Yep, I'll move you. Councillor Martin, Councillor King, I think is seconding. Right, all those in favour, can we do this by a show of hands, please? Please, Joe.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So it's 9 for, those against? And those abstaining? 2. So that's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Right, item 13 then, change of use from golf course land to residential gardens and erection of open metal fencing at land at Moorpark Golf Course, Batchworth Heath, Moorpark, Rickmansworth. Adam, do you have an update at all?
No, there's no update on this one, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have a member of the public who wishes to speak on this, and Mr. Starr, if you'd like to come forward.
4, okay, sorry.
4. Oh, it's 4. Just the same as before, 3 minutes, and we'll let you know when it gets to 2 metres 30.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Ian Starr, and I'm a director of the applicant. I'm speaking in favour of the application and against the case officer's report. The area of land involved will remain in the Greenbelt and still be part of the registered park and garden, and so there is actually no harm to either. In fact, the change of use will actually enhance both, as the area sold will be properly maintained by the new owners, unlike now, as we do not look after it, as it is not part of the golf course at all, but a mass of brambles, weeds, and overgrown non-native laurels. The area is less than 0.5% of the registered park, and in fact it is less than that, as about half of the application site is actually not in Greenbelt, and a third is not registered park either. The case officer does not seem to have considered this. For example, the land behind number 30 Aston's Road was adversely possessed against us over 20 years ago, and Historic England even agreed to de-designate it from the registered park, which makes their objections now somewhat contradictory. What we are talking about is merely the moving of some fencing, but we are still keeping 10 to 20 metres of the woodland, so that no one will see the new fencing, let alone the change of use. This is actually a marked contrast to the rest of the registered park, where the boundary treatment of the golf courses is directly onto fences and walls of adjoining houses. There will also now be detailed covenants that we have agreed with the owners to ensure that the woodland is kept and that there is no built development. This is actually better for the council than the current situation for the land between 16 and 20 Aston's Road, 30 and also 1 Anson's Walk is being occupied by the house owners already and has been for years with no such covenants.
The case officer talks of it being a buffer zone. This will remain anyway, as I have said, but the use of that term suggests that it's not really part of the registered park at all. This, in my view, is correct, as the boundary is merely an artificial construct delineated by the 3 golf courses built in 1923, and is of no historical or environmental significance. What is important, in our view, is to maintain the mansion, the gardens and the old pleasure grounds from the 17 and 1800s.
30 seconds.
They are the real reason why it is a registered park. We have done this in the golf club assiduously over the last 25 years, but the costs are enormous, over £500,000 a year, which is almost twice what our peer golf clubs proportionately spend for a golf course, clubhouse and gardens. We need the money for this change of use to help us continue to do so, and if you need more financial evidence, we will happily provide it. Finally, I note that the Ecology Comment was raised very recently.
That's 3 minutes now.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Members of the committee, do you have anything to say on this? There is a recommendation, and that is to turn this down. But is there anything anyone would like to say? No, in that case, do I have a proposer and a seconder to go with the officer's recommendation that this be refused? Councillor Martin? Me again? And a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Clark, second. All those in favour of refusing this application, please show hands. And those against? And those abstaining?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, that is carried 6 to 5. Thank you very much.
That's abstentions and 0 against.
Yeah. Item 14, retrospective installation of an external electric roller shutter at 4 Odin Parade, High Street, Rickmansworth. Scott, do you have any updates? No update. Members of the committee, anything to say? There is a recommendation. Oh, we do have two speakers.
Odin support.
Right.
And Steve Mander from Bedford Community Council.
Okay, we do have 2 members who wish to speak.
Emma Mitchell.
And Emma Mitchell, if you'd like to come down and speak, and you're speaking in favour of this, I understand. You'll get 3 minutes the same as everybody else, and we'll advise you at 2 minutes 30.
Thank you. My name is Emma Mitchell of 4 Odin Parade. Firstly, I'd like to address the misleading statements in the argument against us. Clause 8.2 states, did not have any formal pre-application discussions with the LPA. Prior to signing the lease, we verbally agreed the shutter with the council representatives Adrian Smallwood and Ross Pettiford. Neither made us aware of any further formalities or requirements to meet. It was agreed with ease and not a case of disregarding the planning authorities as insinuated. Paragraph 19, the appellant has confirmed their agreement to this and I have accordingly imposed condition. We have not agreed anything. We were unaware of any problem and still of whom the conservation officer is. Who is this conservation officer? I phoned TRDC to speak to them and they told me they didn't exist. Paragraph 19, protect equipment, reasonable degree of security. Yes, the equipment is a means of our livelihoods, but more importantly, we protect our stock and the valuables entrusted to us by the public. Degrading our security to create reasonable degree of security is not plausible. We likely hold the most expensive stock at any one time within Rickmansworth High Street. Clause 7.2.6, solid shutters. Our shutters aren't solid. They have holes within the shutter throughout, as photographed on the application. Clause 7.2.8, President. The definition is an official action or decision that has happened in the past and that is seen as an example or rule to be followed in similar situations later. There is a shutter existing on Odin Parade which has been granted planning permission, as well as many others in Rickmansworth. This is seemingly discrimination to not allow other understandably viable business types to protect their business with the necessary security requirements. Our requirements from TH March Jewellery Insurance Specialists stipulate to install an external shutter which covers the entire shop front of the premises. This not only protects our business but also protects the property of our landlords, Three Rivers. If the glass is smashed, it falls under buildings cover, which is the financial responsibility of Three Rivers, and would result in otherwise avoidable police response wasting taxpayers' money. The shutter and glass are censored, linking to our alarm system, and a required Grade 4 police response, and the police have also agreed that we meet their standards of protection expected of jewellers. We equally have public support in the form of a petition, with their responses saying either "what shutter" or "you're jewellers, you need a shutter." We are a target. There are historical robberies of smashed windows in Amore, 3 years consecutively, and Solitaire within the High Street, both which have closed since. In closing, after the catastrophic past 2 years to the economy, we are working to help regenerate Rickmansworth High Street, drawing in affluent footfall from far and near, and keeping the dwindling High Street thriving. We cannot stress enough how imperative our existing shutter is to our business, and to help continue with this regeneration. Removal would not only be detrimental, but diabolical. Simply put, no shutter, no insurance, no shop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Mander, who wishes to speak on behalf of the Bedford Community Council.
Thank you very much, Chairman. My name is Steve Mander. I'm a member of the BCC Planning Committee. The BCC Planning Committee recently reviewed this application and advised that they did not have any objections or comments. We are and were completely aware of the nature of the conservation area and took this into our discussions and deliberations. At the time of our review, we felt that this would be acceptable to all parties, and were therefore somewhat surprised to see that the application had not been approved. From reading the officer's notes for this meeting, it seems the key objection comes from the Conservation Officer. None of the neighbours, 7 of them, who were approached had any objections, and from our own research, none seemed to be worried about it having any impact on the street scene. Whilst we understand the Conservation Officer's comments as a general observation for a conservation area, we believe each case should be looked at individually and considered on its merits. We would recommend this application is approved and the following considered. We all need to support the high street and the retail in general in Rickmansworth, without making it difficult for tenants and trade and putting off new trade members. It seems that the lease was negotiated that the shutter was an important topic and no direction was given either way. As to the respective landlord and with the property being within the boundaries of TRDC, would it not be expected that the negotiation stage, the prospective tenant would have been directed to the planning department on this issue if it was likely to arise? For the tenant, the need of the shutter is an insurance issue, and therefore always of importance. We are advised that structurally it would also be very difficult and expensive to mount a similar shutter internally. As can be seen from your own officer's photographs figure DME, the roller shutter casing has been installed in a way that it disappears into the background of the surrounding colours and paintwork. As can be seen in figure C, the roller shutter actually protrudes less than the adjoining units, and in fact protrudes less than the units either side of it. Looking at the whole of the building and adjoining unit under the same ownership, the retail element is better maintained than the upper part, where it looks as if the windows and brickworks are in need of maintenance.
Just a second remaining.
In reality, this is not the case, and it is it is not the case that it is overtly prominent, nor is it intrusive in the street scene, and is doing no harm to the conservation area. In conclusion, we would ask the TRDC Planning Committee to grant permission in this instance and accept the tenant has done everything it can to mitigate a potential problem and meet the requirement of their insurance company to enable them to continue to trade.
Thank you. Just over 3 minutes. Thank you very much indeed. If you could turn the microphone off, that would be helpful. Right. councillors. Did you want to speak? Councillor Bedford.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the officer whether under the reason for refusal, when he states that no public benefits are considered to exist, which would outweigh the identified harm, whether he has considered the vitality and vibrancy of the high street, and whether that would be lost if would be detrimentally affected if the premises were to close, and if other premises were to similarly close.
So the nature of the application is obviously a private commercial premises, and the lesser substantial harm has to be weighed up against public benefit. So I appreciate obviously there may be a public benefit in terms of shopping at the jewellers, but that's not considered sufficient to outweigh the less substantial harm to the conservation area or the heritage asset. So.
Can we come back on that? Right, I think that is it is a matter of opinion. We are encouraging more people to use the high streets of this country. We are encouraging people to use those high streets after dark. We are encouraging a cafe culture in our high streets. And we need to have a good mix of premises of different businesses running in our high streets. Otherwise, we run the risk of losing the important part of our high streets, which is to have a range of businesses there which may not attract people on a daily basis, obviously, or even a weekly, monthly, or even annual basis, but provide such a mix of businesses that people are drawn to our high streets and keep them going. Otherwise, we are going to lose our high streets. There is at least one high street in the district where permission for shutters has been given, because it's my own high street and I see them there, and I don't find this shuttering particularly what's the phrase used here, which creates a hostile form of development. I don't feel that's hostile. It's not making me feel scared, it's not making me feel under attack. And I think the risk of losing a business is far greater than the risk that someone might feel in a hostile environment because they see that shutter as they walk or driving on the high street. And I am having problems at the moment with the recommendation, Chair. I think we need to, if it was a full blackout roller blind, then I would be totally objecting. But I don't feel the same problem, and I do think it's a matter of opinion as to whether we put the vitality of our high street ahead of the need to prevent a small shutter being put down. It looks like a Venetian blind. So I'm having a problem at the moment, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Hayward. Councillor Wood.
Chairman, my concern was regarding the Conservation Officer's report, which is a very generic report. They clearly haven't come and seen the site to say generally considered unacceptable in conservation areas. I just don't think it's a strong enough refusal for this. I've walked up and down that road several times, never noticed that they have a roller shutter box above. I agree that the bits left and right are more prominent, and indeed the roof of the adjoining one with its light is way more prominent than this box. And I do think we need to protect our high streets, but fundamentally for me, it's the Conservation Officer's report, which I think is very generic and doesn't fit this application at all.
Thank you. Councillor Lloyd.
Having listened to the speakers and read the report, I'd actually like to move approval, Chairman, because I think the grounds on the balance of evidence, I'm looking at the shutters, I've seen far worse shutters, we want to keep business in the high street. We are looking at this application. If we have another application next door, we would look at it on its own merits. And on that basis, I would like to move approval.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Corey.
I'm happy to second that, basically what I said.
Can I just make a comment? I appreciate obviously what members are saying, planning enforcement served an enforcement notice on 88 High Street for external roller shutters. If members are aware of the abracadabra premises, and officers are of the opinion that both sites are comparable. So we have served a notice, and those roller shutters have recently been removed as a result of that notice. So we feel that the sites are comparable.
But I think we needed to make it as a point, because if you look at the role, we've just been comparing the photos, they're very similar, but we understand through the discussion that members are talking about the specific circumstances of this site and particular benefit of approving this application, but we just felt for the benefit of the minutes and because of the nature of the enforcement notice, it was relevant to note.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Councillor Hudson, then Councillor Carroya, then Councillor Bedford.
Thank you. You have to excuse me for being a bit naive, because obviously I'm a new councillor, but I am a ward councillor. I'm a little bit puzzled, because in the report it said that there isn't, you've got a lot of shutters in the high street, but there's no precedent set. But what is a precedent if there isn't a lot of shutters, some of which look a lot worse? I appreciate there's been, I don't know how long some of those shutters have been there, because I've only been in the high street for 5 years on a personal basis. But my concern is that if you're saying that there isn't a precedent set, then what does that actually mean?
You do actually need, I think you'd have to declare an interest.
No, just to be clear that you're not a consultee or you're not affected by the application, because you just said you're in the high.
No, I actually live in I live in the high street. I have a business in the high street, but it doesn't. Whether they have, the only thing that would affect me on a personal basis if somebody kept coming and smashing the windows, and there was glass and there was robbers in the high street every 5 minutes. But as on a personal basis, on a business basis, whether they have the shutters or not, or whether they are there or not, doesn't have a direct. Doesn't directly affect me at all, or my business, or my livelihood, or my life.
Councillor Carroya.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start again, Chair. I have a sympathy with the applicant. And the reason is no shutter, no insurance, no business. To be frank with you, it's a jewelry shop. Without the shutter, they cannot be insured. Each application has to be judged on its own merit. At the end of the day, if you're going to compare a hardware store, which is what we were just told, with a jewelry shop, we're going the wrong way. I'm sorry, I cannot support this. I feel we should be supporting the shop. I'm sorry, I'm not able to support officers on this one.
Okay, I fully understand. Councillor Bedford, then Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, as I understand what the officers have said about the enforcement action being taken against Abracadabra, which I believe is a discount store, and so a slightly different premises. But also, I believe normally when we start enforcement action, we invite the applicant to submit a planning application. Have we not done so on this occasion?
Yes, a letter was sent out to the owners of the premises and have invited an application to be submitted, but also advised that in their best interests they should apply for an internal shutter.
Okay, so they have had the same treatment as everybody else who receives enforcement, which is, as I said, to receive to be told that what they have done is against the current planning. They need to apply for planning permission for what they've got because it's not under permitted development. So that's what we do to everybody. So we say you haven't got permitted development rights to do that, but you can apply for a planning application in order to regularise the situation which you are currently in. That's what this applicant is trying to do, to regularise the situation that they are in. It's come to committee, and Abracadabra are free to do the same thing, to bring it to commit, to put an application in, and for it to come to committee if that's what members wish to do. And at that point, we can make a decision on the basis of that individual site, whether we wish to give that permission or not. And I don't think the fact that we've put enforcement action in against another business which has the same right to bring an application forward as this business means we should refuse this one. I'm really unstrong with that, and I do wish to second the suggestion from Councillor Lloyd that we approve this application, and I think we probably need to move to that quite soon, Chairman.
Okay, I do have Councillor Raw put his hand up, and then I think Claire would like to say something. Possibly Scott.
Yes, I wanted to say really, considering what Councillor Bedford said about the visualise the look, I think that is something we're considering here. Is obviously abracadabra. I presume it was an all metal shutter that is obviously. I know it's irrelevant, but I think Councillor Bedford made a point. It's not that bad, so I think it has got to be discussed on its merit.
Okay, thank you. No. Okay, so we've had Councillor Lloyd.
I'm assuming we need to attach some conditions, but it's slightly different because it's already in situ. Could the officer clarify that before?
Essentially, because it's a retrospective application, there are no conditions.
Okay, so we have a recommendation from Councillor Lloyd, seconded by Councillor Bedford, that we overturn the officer's recommendation and approve or not, do the opposite.
Grant planning permission unconditionally.
Unconditionally. So, let's get the wording right. Councillor Lloyd has proposed, Councillor Sarah Bedford seconded, that we go against the officer's recommendation to be refused, that we are allowing this to go ahead. All those in favour? So that is carried unanimously.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming. Right. And last but not least this evening, item 15, demolition of existing dwelling and construction of four off, detached two-storey dwellings with roof and basement level accommodation, detached garages, formation of new access drive, alterations to existing access, landscaping works and other ancillary works at Glenwood, Chorleywood Road, Rickmansworth. So, Tom. It's gone.
Tom's not here.
Okay, Claire.
Just in terms of updates, Chair, thank you. So on page 5 of the report, within the Highways Officer's comment, it states that the nearest station is Chorleywood. The site is obviously positioned between Chorleywood and Rickmansworth stations, but is obviously closest to Rickmansworth station. This does not change the Highways assessment of the proposal. Hertfordshire Ecology have provided comments. They don't object to the application, but consider that a preliminary back route assessment should be undertaken prior to determination. The applicant has been advised of this and this assessment has now been undertaken and was submitted to us today. This has now been forwarded to Hertfordshire Ecology for them to review. As such, it's recommended that the decision is delegated to the Director of Community Environmental Services to grant planning permission, subject to the preliminary back route assessment being considered and found acceptable by Herts Ecology, subject to the conditions set out in the report and any other conditions as required by Hertfordshire Ecology. But there's no further updates. Thank you, Chair.
That's great, thank you very much, Claire. Right, we have two speakers. We have a Mr. Toon who wishes to speak. Should put the microphone on. Mr. Rayner first, sorry. Just the same as everybody else this evening, we'll have 3 minutes and we'll let you know 2 minutes 30.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Clayton Rayner, joint owner of the strip of land adjoining 21 Lime Tree Walk to the rear of the applicant's Glenwood site. Of the 24 public comments that have been posted in relation to the applicant's development, 92% are objections, including that from the Chorleywood Parish Council. If you analyse these objecting comments, it is very clear that the overwhelming concerns relate to the applicant's desire to create a new access road directly onto the A-rated arterial Chorleywood Road in order to service 3 new properties to the rear of Glenwood. In particular, these concerns specifically reference the potentially hazardous nature for the new residents and delivery vehicles having to turn right against busy, fast-flowing traffic when they want to head towards Rickmansworth, or when vehicles need to turn right into the new proposed access road when coming from Chorleywood or the nearby M25. In fact, it was for these road safety reasons that the new roads of Spencer Walk, Linwood Heights and Lime Tree Walk were created to the south of the Chorleywood Road in the 1980s and 1990s, specifically to service new build homes on the backlands or rear gardens of properties along this stretch of the A404. As such, I believe there existed a de facto protocol from the Highways Agency that new access roads for backland development from the A404 was not acceptable. But this is exactly what the current application is seeking to do, thereby creating a new precedent for the Chorleywood Road. If you look at both the statutory statements made by the Highways Authority in relation to the new access road, they are entirely focused on technical issues relating to the size and opening of the driveway. They do not mention anywhere the possible effect on disruption to traffic flow, or perhaps more pertinently, the dangers to residents, deliveries, stopping traffic at this point along the A404, particularly at night, in heavy rain or fog. As the most recent public comment from the homeowner of Bedford says, it is wishful thinking to say that there have been no major accidents over the last 5 years. Mark my words, this is an accident waiting to happen. However, the reason I'm here tonight is to suggest a mutually beneficial alternative for consideration by the applicant and the planning committee. We would be willing to consider donating our strip of land to the applicant's charity in return for negotiating access to the rear of the site from Lime Tree Walk. If this was to happen, the main benefits would be increased profit for the applicant as 6 properties.
That's 3 minutes. Thanks, Sam. Right, Mr. Tyrrell.
Good evening, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in favour of this application. We have been working closely with the planning department through 2 pre-applications prior to the application you see in front of you. And it's been taking over a year to get to this stage to make sure everything's covered. This has enabled this highly considered planning application to achieve officer's recommendation for approval. Our proposal has also been through the council's own internal consultation process. All specialists consulted are supportive of the scheme. Throughout the planning process, we have responded to resident and parish council comments in detail, which has been received favourably. One of the main points raised was in relation to the altered site access of the Chorleywood Road and the potential impact to traffic. This is obviously quite a key subject right now. We are pleased to confirm that Highways did not consider the introduction of the 4 new dwellings to form any impact. Furthermore, they have raised no objection to the application following our amendments to the site access, which I hope now provides some reassurance to the residents who had concerns. Following the points just been made, Highways do assess traffic flow, they do assess speeds. It's one of the fundamental things they do look at, although they might not have referenced it within the assessment, but it's one of the key things they do look at. I would like you to know that as well as meeting all relevant planning policy requirements, these dwellings will be built to the highest of standards and in full accordance with the latest building regulations. Before I finish, I would like to remind the committee members that the application has a very strong officer's recommendation for approval
With this level of officers' support, we trust that the committee members will agree with the Council's recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Claire, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments. Obviously, the first comment, I note the comments from the speaker against the application, but obviously just to remind members that ultimately it is the application before members this evening that we have to assess, and obviously with the access as proposed at this time, and as set out in the report, the Highways Authority have considered the application. They're satisfied that the proposal would not have an adverse impact on the safety operation of the highway network, and therefore they've raised no objections subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members of the committee. Again, Councillor Hayward.
Sorry, just a simple one. These are pretty significant sized houses, looking at the square footage with basements and roofs, etc. Is the parking adequate for them?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Yes, the parking complies with policy. The amenity space standards are also well in excess of standards for properties of this size. And also, as set out in the character section, we often require kind of a 1.5 metre spacing in spacious areas between properties, but these dwellings would achieve a spacing of at least 5 metres between their adjoining flank walls. So yes, it's acknowledged that they are large detached properties, but we consider that they are in keeping with the character of the area and that there is appropriate spacing maintained around the plot, and as I said, it meets policy standards in terms of parking, amenity space, etc. Thank you.
I'm sure it does.
It is an integral garage on that property.
No, there is.
Oh, apologies. Essentially, I think that there's indicative cars shown on the plan, but you can fit more cars on that driveway. So it might not have a garage, but they don't have to provide a garage. They still have, you can see there a significant space on their driveway. Obviously, there's 2 cars indicated, but you could easily fit 2 more cars in front of those. So the properties all have sufficient parking in accordance with the standards.
Yeah, you haven't driven my little smart car on there, have you? That series 4-wheel drive one.
You keep that underneath. Anything for anybody else? Councillor Wall?
I know Claire said that highways haven't said anything. I'm a little bit shocked. Trinidad Road is an extremely busy road. I can't believe they've not made any comments concerning traffic build-up. I mean, I live near there and I don't even use that road in the morning. It's terrible. So, highways, no report at all on it?
Highways have commented on the application. They're invited to comment as they are on all applications of this nature, and they've made comments which are set out in the report, and they raise no objection. Now, they might not have made specific comments on that point, but clearly, as you would have seen from their comments on other applications, if they felt that there was issues or concerns that they needed to raise, they would have raised those. But they quite clearly, they raised an initial objection to the application. That was due to the width of the access, but obviously there were amended plans submitted, and they've confirmed that following those amended plans, they raised no objection.
And I personally would agree with that. I travel out that road practically every day. In the morning, going one way when there's traffic, and in the evening, coming home when there's traffic. But it's a 40-mile-an-hour road. And the traffic travels as it can travel up that road. If it's 40 miles an hour, because there's not a lot, it's 40 miles an hour. There's an awful lot of cars and lorries and stuff turning right into that side of the Chorleywood Road, and vice versa, turning right the other side as well. So I'm not surprised I haven't made much of a comment personally. Anyway, anything else from anybody? No? Okay, well, in that case I'm inviting you to propose and second to move the recommendation that planning permission be granted or ask for alternative recommendation. Councillor King, happy to recommend it. Councillor Martin to second. All those in favour, one moment.
Apologies, but just for the benefit of the minutes, I'm just confirming that that's obviously as per my amended recommendation, so that's obviously that it's delegated to the Director to grant planning permission, just subject to the review of the preliminary roost assessment. Thank you, apologies to.
Fine, in that case, we have a proposer and a seconder. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour of the officer's recommendation?
8.
And those against? And those abstaining? 3. So that's carried. Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for your time and patience this evening. And thank you, officers, as well, for exactly the same.
Members, can I just while you're all here, I was obviously not for meeting in a meeting, Lead Local Flood Authority, we've had correspondence from them recently, that's county, that they are struggling with resources